When a new unit is released, our first instinct is to look at its abilities, which is fair enough. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. I mean, abilities have historically defined many units, especially those with CC abilities, like Sanzo and Bomber. But that ability doesn't always define the unit, and more often than not, even multiple units that carry the same ability play completely different roles. This is the Daliasan Theorem, why abilities aren't everything. Let's start with one of the most dominant units in the meta, Can-Can. Can-Can has 60% slow against Reds for 4 seconds with 6.5 seconds TBA. With talents, she gains alien targeting and double bounty. So let's look at the ability alone. Slow against Reds and aliens is a pretty decent ability, though the uptime and proc chance and the range leaves much to be desired. So looking at the abilities alone, you would just dismiss her as a worse version of Enchantress or Psycho Cat. Double Bounty also doesn't help with CC units with poor damage output. But of course, as we all know, looking at the stats, Can-Can isn't a CC unit with poor damage output. That's 38,250 damage per hit at level 30. Not much can rival that, especially for only 675 cost. 5.8k DPS for 220 range at level 30, which is very high even for single target standards. And of course, double bounty works extremely nicely with that high nuke damage. Being able to one-shot peons like Doge Dart, Gabriel, and Celebrudals and get huge cash from it, which turns Can-Can into one of the best, most cost-efficient, and dominant attackers in the entire game. Now onto the namesake of the theorem itself, Sea King Daliasan. Back in May 2022, BCJP 11.6 was released. Like I said in the intro, abilities are typically what define a unit or make it special. So when data miners got the data for Daliasan, the first thing they mentioned was its abilities. Slow against Floating and Angel plus Savage Blow. This is quite a similar spread of abilities to Kaihime, but the niche is even less relevant since Sanzo is well known to be one of the single strongest CC units in the history of the damn game. And since he's a Dragon Emperor, let's just say that expectations weren't exactly high. We even got X-Cult infamous Discord message. So now let's look at the stats. 4.4k DPS for 510 range is alright. Let's compare his general stats with Mami Tomoe. For those who don't know, Mami Tomoe is a well-respected Uber from the Madoka Magica collab. Speaking of which, with 14.1, I know that collab is about to get its rerun and Daliasan also got its true form, but for the sake of this scenario, let's just compare pre-true form stats. They have about the same range, pierce damage, DPS, and TBA. Mami is a well-respected generalist with decent to good stats all around. Now comparing that to Daliasan would at least make Daliasan similarly a well-respected generalist with decent to good stats all around. But on top of this, Daliasan also has a 20% Savage Blow chance in evolved form, which inflates his DPS to about Awakened Urun's DPS at 6.1k, at 510 range with LD to 710. This is flat out absurd, and it gets even better with his briefly aforementioned true form. He would have been fine in general even without Savage Blow and would have definitely already made a well-respected unit, which is why it's so damn important to look at the stats. Alright, so now you might be thinking, but there's still abilities in those previous examples that do matter, like Double Bounty on Can-Can and Savage Blow on Daliasan. That's fair, but I should first clarify what exactly this theorem represents, since the way I phrased it is a little misleading. This theorem is the Daliasan Theorem, why abilities aren't everything. But it's not why abilities don't matter. Abilities matter a lot, I'm not gonna deny that. At the start of the video, I was talking about how many units have been defined by their abilities, like Bomber and Sanzo. The theorem is pointing out that abilities are only part of the picture, and bad abilities don't ruin a unit completely if their stats can hold up. And you need to look at both the stats and the ability to get the full picture. But just to drive the point home, I'm going to go over one more example. One example of a unit that has literally no abilities. No Savage Blow, no crit, no immunities, no nothing. The unit in question is the one, the only Bahamut Cat. Throughout his 3 forms, none of them have a single ability. Okay, technically there's multi-hit in his crew form, but it isn't an ability so much as a property of the attack itself, kind of like area attack and single target, and also multi-hit isn't stated in the game, so I'm not gonna count it. I think we should all be somewhat familiar with Bahamut, but I'll give you a quick rundown anyway. Bahamut Cat is a ranged nuker with a colossal 85,000 damage per hit, but with an equally colossal 20 seconds TBA. Bahamut Cat is a fairly solid unit for early game. No matter how you look at it, 85k damage is still 85k damage, which is still really strong. Especially when you consider that it works on everything if you can land the hit. This is a good unit for non-Uber playthroughs until you get AREN, which is much easier to use in general. So most people just toss Bahamut by the wayside until you get Awakened Bahamut. Awakened Bahamut trades his range for speed and greatly shortens his TBA and also noticeably reduces his cooldown, and brings his DPS from a solid 4.2k to a cataclysm causing 30k. Again, no abilities needed. Without any abilities relying entirely on his stats, Awakened Bahamut is one of the most elite, most important units in a playthrough. He does fall off late game, where power creep is intense and his stats can't keep up anymore, but before that, he is an absolute menace. I can say that he is the absolute core of no Uber mid-game. Just look at the number of boss stages where his pure damage output is absolutely key. Like there's Hanya, Cloudnell, Mina, PB, Doremi, 440. Even less notable stages like False Resurrection. And even when he is in the core, he's still great on stages like Relic B, Floor 30, the list goes on and on and on. Again, with no abilities to speak of, just pure damage and speed. Honestly, maybe I should name this theorem the Bahamut Theorem instead. But I think you get the idea. A unit's stats and its abilities are both really important in defining how good the unit is. Good abilities can make up for poor stats and vice versa, but both are very important to the functioning of a unit. So yeah, that's all I have. Let me know what you think about this theorem. What other theorems do you want me to make? I will read all the comments unless this blows up and there's too many comments, but probably not. But anyway, thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Right, bye.